Hello and most welcome to Heidegger 1750. So it seems that we already managed to make half a century into the series. We will today continue with a summary and the last bit of the language game of revelation by Sedmak and Andreas Blank. And I will try to get the whole article together and see what we went through. One of those things is the absolute seriousness of doubting propositions. And that is something that we mentioned before, about 20 episodes earlier on. There is a quote about it on page 249. And that was the difference between attitude towards and opinion that. Opinion that is a doubtful proposition, something that could be either true or false. An example could be, I am in the opinion that it will rain today. So let's say that there is a 50% chance of that. So it's a proposition with a truth value. Whereas having an attitude is completely different. And in the examples we took was from Johnston and Schulte. That somebody has a soul is an attitude. It is not a proposition that can be doubted or even have doubt as an aspect within itself. Doubt in an attitude is strictly not a possibility. This is especially in Wittgenstein strengthened in the posthumously published book on certainty. And the attitude, the absolute certainty is not 100%. It's something that can never, ever have doubt as an ingredient. It is simply not built up that way. It is entirely directed towards an already established understanding of certainty. Undoubting certainty. a certainty that leaves little or no room for speculation and others. The language game in Revelation is constructed with these attitudes. To play it, doubt cannot be a factor. Those are, strictly speaking, not propositions. Consisting of certainties that build up a new way of seeing what was established in the Old Testament as containing contingencies and doubt to be something that is beyond doubt. Not having an element of speculation in it. A language game that is built up from the very bottom as a secure structure will be working quite differently than a system that needs explanation, that understand the world or what it is directed towards only in contingencies. Passing on a worldview, we can also see on page 249 happens through a kind of persuasion where you get, so to speak, convinced of something. I would like to use the phrase, something sticks to you. You are in a way that makes it possible for something to adhere. You will be able to penetrate the understanding of what you do by, so to speak, accepting it. It becomes part and parcel of the understanding of your doing. I think it can be much more pertinent to say that an attitude, it's a way of acting towards. So it's a movement in you that takes the form of this clear act, this convinced movement. So instead of acquiring a proposition only that you own, you will be embodying the attitude directly. Without an attitude is acquiring a specific way of moving, of acting in the world. So you see, a movement or an inquirement of a movement does not leave space for doubt. Doubt actually would make little, if any, sense at all. Your actual conviction is what makes the success of the language game. To go in and play it wholeheartedly is an extremely important part of what an attitude is. No room is there left for making up the idea of possibilities for failure or non-failure. This very thing is one of the most devastating confusions of how the language games are working. It is seeing something that always plays the role in the language game as something absolutely firmly established. And compares that to something that is always a contingency, always works in contingent manner in the language game, because that is the position that expression, that concept occupies. I would say that once more, the idea of technological explanatory thinking is causative of this very confusion. Confounding what today is extremely prevalent, and that is the contingent proposition starting with a why question, why it evolved, what is behind it, its reason, its origin, and of course, without any doubt, also its original. So in this confusion or confoundment caused, I would say personally, by the underlying picture, a sort of doubling of reality, where there is something outside of experience, the firmly established outside world that we can only understand indirectly. And that needs to be compared with the inside world, the hidden world of the private language, one in the Caesarean take becomes the signified, that is the outside world, and the other one, the sign, resides somewhere in the insideness. So now I think we get at least a pretty clear sketch of the picture, of a sort of a container for perception, understanding, emotion, thinking, memory, and many more inside a container. This container is connected indirectly with sensual organs to the outside world. Only very indirectly can that container, through two holes, the eyes, suggestively, and two holes suggesting hearing and so forth, connect to this disconnected outsideness. and from that outsideness gather pieces or objects of understanding. This was called in Gestalt psychology visual objects. But of course, many different names can here be applicable, shown to do the trick. And then when perception has done its turn, maybe light is shining into the container, and that light is relaying certain information of the outsideness. It could be the interior of a room or distant stars in the Milky Way. We never ever have direct access to these things that thereby become unreal, almost transcendental. I would say that that worldview is quite to the point proposed by the physicist or the physicists Hugh Everett and Max Sedmak, who propose worlds beyond this, where we have no evidence whatsoever, no ways of knowing. And that is already established from the beginning. Once more, we have here this factor of a priori. It's already there at the very beginning. The stars, the planets, the interior of your room has already existed, and it exists somewhere apart from your capacities, outside the language game, if you like to see it that way. I think that would be a pretty clear first sketch of the language game becoming limited by the underlying picture of this container-like ego self or I that is perceiving or taking in small bits of reality incredibly indirectly. This makes us access very little understanding whatsoever. Understanding becomes scarce, a rare commodity. And the I will claim ownership to that rare commodity. That I is not extending the concepts or playing the game. It is strictly outside of it all. Passively observing being satisfied with those scarce small gifts of knowledge that somehow seeps through the system. Are being put to the bank and stored in the central reserve of the memory bank. You see now why propositions become dominant, because of this very model of the world. Also, to make it stronger, there is a paradoxical strengthening situatedness of this container in an already established world. And we walk around in this already established world that somehow has always been there. But it has no connections whatsoever to what we do, who we are. The objects are strictly unconnected to us. You see here how this underlying picture is, I would say, also behind the hue evolution and Max Tegmarkian visions. I see them as brothers in a family of distancing. And it's not so much only about the transcendental beyondness of the world or the theories of other worlds as proposed by authors Everett and Tegmark. It is most definitely already in this very world where reality has gone through the window. It can only be established by us participating in the language game. The words, the concepts can only gain reality when they are let to be into the doing. When they are disjunct, cut off, they little by little lose their strengths, lose their ability to tell, to give understanding and inform us, give us nutrients, I'd say. And now you see also why revelation, if it's forced into this technological mode of reasoning, whether concepts and understanding in revelation are for the most part propositions that needs to be confirmed or disqualified by time, or could be accepted based on probability or likeness. My view in this case is that revelation was never thought as a propositional game of contingent propositions that should be checked against originals or origins. Instead, it is firmer, and it's part of an entire language game that you can enter into by, so to speak, moving the ways suggested in the writings of John. Embody these understandings, making them yours. Something that is incredibly different from any idea that reality is cut off from us. In this take, reality will be something that you do. You are in on it. You become the extension of the words. Your doings will be fashioned in the format of revelation. And when you do that, they will start to work. You will be participating in the game. You will be an active player. One could even say, all of a sudden you become the quantum mechanical observer in reality, because you are in on it. Of course, in very stark contrast to the established way of the picture, where you are cut off, nothing of your will, intention, determination, or your knowledge makes any difference whatsoever. In the interviews with Professor Petter Mostad of Chalmers University here in Gothenburg, we learn that the working statistics today is participatory. It has a prior, a priming. You can replace that with the Wittgensteinian expression, attitude towards. This attitude towards do not stem from the world at all. It is what we bring into the world. Our firmest intention and convictions. And that is the only thing that can bring about the world. It is strictly no world coming to the fore without this priming or prior. So it shows that the inclination that we decided not based on established facts, relevant information, or previously stored knowledge determines what we understand of the world. No, it is ourselves, our attitude towards, which is simply decided on, not caused by origins. Not stemming from somewhere else. But coming from our very will, from our wish and want to participate, to be active. Our joie de vivre, if you like. So we have a most decisive role to play, the most important. And if we don't accept that offer, we will also lose reality for us. Reality can only come when we voluntarily, with our whole force, decides to participate with our very own attitude, our wishes, our wants, what we prefer, coming from nowhere else, no origin or no original, neither in some memory bank or some independent information bit indirectly collected and given reality by someone else, an expert that puts his or her signature on something in order to make it real, accepted, or true. That will give very little sustenance to our understanding capacities. It will not bring forth a full blossom world with all colors, with all shapes and forms. Those can only become accessible if this first mode of ours is absolutely voluntary and not limited by small bits of previously hardly acquired bits of information. No, it starts with ourselves, and for us to make it vivid, functional, we need most enforcedly enter. We also need to gather will to make that strong, to make it functional. Another aspect that also has come to befallen the revelation is making it all explicit. The explicitness is closely connected to the idea of the technological knowing. The technological knowing wants everything to be put out in the light. To be under the fluorescent light of illumination. Something that became very strong under the Enlightenment, forcefully boosted by the technological revolution and the clearing up of things, so to speak, by Sir Isaac Newton and followers. The era of enlightenment changed the conception of mind completely. This is most definitely where the idea that mind was some sort of contingency became very strong. And the mind dwelling, or the mind in the ego, dwelling inside the person, already being in a pre-established world, in a limited sense, having access only very indirectly to the things in the hidden outsideness. That process began already in the 16th century and led to the idea that explaining, translating, putting it out into the open, making it clear for understanding, is the thing that makes it possible to understand. Or I would use the term grasp. The grasping is acutely different from the normal understanding, where you are involved, where you participate, where you are not outside of the reality. Although this very model suggests that you are inside something pre-established, where you have no connection whatsoever to what's inside of that. I will take a quote here on page 257. And I would say this is maybe one of the most important phrases in the whole article. The basis is the second paragraph. The basis of John's worldview is found in the Church's universal confession based on Christian baptism. John sees and hears that Christ alone is worthy and able to open the scroll with the 7 seals. And listen now, it is through the mystery of Christ alone that this world can be interpreted. And even stronger, without exception, all Christian understanding and judgment are based on Christ. This is as far you can come from contingency. It leaves no doubt whatsoever. It's an attitude towards, not something that you should weigh in your hand in a technological fashion and decide whether the proof or proofs points into the direction of these words to be true. No. It works when you make these things a part of you. That is playing the language game of revelation. Accepting that these are the true sayings of Christ, having no doubt whatsoever, because simply doubt is not part of this language game. I will go into the text now when my colleague has returned, luckily, to the conference, and read the rest of the text. We left off at page 261. A similar opposition to the system of the whore of Babylon is found in the indices of the water and the tree, and of life in the new city. The water and the tree of life symbolize God's gift, that in a similar way has been promised to the conquerors. These gifts contrast the false gifts of the beast that promise riches and luxury, but which are not for free and can only be obtained through the mark of the beast. Alongside such interpretation is the invitation, come, let anyone who wishes take the water of life as a gift for all Christians in tribulation. It is the present Christian community that will be able to invite us into a place where the water of life is not a luxury item available only for the wealthy, but for all who thirst. Conclusion. As a first step, this study demonstrated that revelation could be seen as an exemplary language game. It is especially the introductory verses of the book that reveal many of the traits of a language game described by Wittgenstein. This suggests that the entire book needs to be interpreted according to the grammatical rules of the language game of revelation. Consequently, in view of Revelation's worldview of the truths revealed to John about God are not simply referring to future events, but become pragmatic statements that are meaningful vis-à-vis the shared form of life of the participants in the same. It must therefore be concluded that revelation is a new language game, and that while being based on family resemblances to apocalyptic literature known to its hearers, seeks to involve Christians then and now, not just to observe and judge the world, but to change it. Winning the game is not merely establishing structures of justice and concrete Christian standards, but implies personal transformation and the certainty of gaining eternal life and salvation. losing the game is losing the eternal life, thus making revelation more than just a game to be played from the outside, but a game to be lived by all Christians. That is the church. The interpretation of revelation through Wittgenstein's language game model has successfully offered a transformation of its meaning for its past hearers into a modern challenge for all Christians to hear and see Christ's revelation in this world. This allows for assuming that Revelation's visions represent a larger meta-theoretical concept of overcoming human predicaments and crises. A systematic delineation of this concept could vice versa provide for a better understanding of the book, as well as for the general theological significance of biblical revelation for its hearers in the world. There will be very little time for summary of the last thing here. We're already way too long past, and I have a visit. But I will only say this and leave the rest of the summary and my participation from my colleague to the next. But I will just mentioning that the shared form of life of the participants, the last phrase on the 261, is of incredible importance. We go to church, we do the liturgy together, we read the texts. That is a shared form of life, not a private language idea of understanding. That would be explanation or explicit, and having that understanding in the container of your insideness. No, it implies a personal transformation and the certainty of gaining eternal life and salvation if you participate, and others as well. Maybe a very short saying. I'm very anxious to hear what Kalle says. He's been out, he had technical difficulties most of the lecture, so we will make it up for that into the next. But do say something short, Kalle.
Yes, I could. Let me see if I find it here. Yes, I could repeat something from previous lectures on this paper by Sedmak. Here, one of the most important things is here on page 14 in the PDF. Also the Nikao sayings, that is, I conquer, are signposts towards its width, that is, to its meaning. So here it's clearly a language game. Nikao is about victory. So in a game, you need to win. So we shouldn't ask what is the Book of Revelation. Instead, how can we use it?
Yes,
By gaining it.
indeed. Very good.
So we should probably stop there. Hans, please say something.
Yes, I say thank you for everyone. Very good short thing by Kalle there. We just see it as the word of Christ. That's the way of going about it. Very good. And I do agree what Locke's Sedmak wrote at the very end of the text, that it could be of general theological significance of biblical revelation for its hearers in the word. It's a game changer. It is really an appella for live Christianity instead of Newtonian explicit understanding, which, as we shown, is made by picture, as I spoke earlier on here. But thank you very much, Kalle. Sorry about your technical mishaps. You can listen to it on the net, and we make an extended discussion in the next time. Thank you, everyone, for listening in also. Have a pleasant morning, day, or afternoon, wherever you are. And I end the recording.